It's 10:30. Welcome to this meeting, the ESPO Management Committee. This meeting is being broadcast live on YouTube and recorded, so it will be available for viewing after the meeting. As you probably are aware, I'm Councillor Mohammed Jamil. I've taken over the portfolio for Finance and Governance at Peterborough City Council. It gives me the pleasure of chairing these meetings for the fourth. So if I can just ask people to go around and introduce themselves, but I have a better idea. I've seen some photos, but as I commented to Anna, I said someone changed their hairstyles. There you go. So, as I said, I'm Mohammed Jamil.
Councillor Maggie Wright, Leicestershire County Council.
Councillor James Poland, Leicestershire County Council.
Councillor Jane James, Norfolk County Council.
Christian Smith from ESPO.
Eric Tapp from ESPO, I'm the Acting Commercial Financial Controller.
Lauren Haslam, Leicestershire County Council, Consortium Secretary.
Anna Paul, Leicestershire County Council, Democratic Services.
Simone Hines, Assistant Director of Finance at Leicestershire County Council.
David Godsall, Assistant Director of Operations at ESPO.
Jane Browning, Head of Customer Experience at
Gary Ford, Assistant Director, Business Development at ESPO.
Kerry Morgan, HR and OD Business Partner for ESPO from Leicestershire County Council.
Maurice Campbell, Assistant Director of Commercial Procurement at ESPO.
County Councillor Sue Rollins, County Council.
Okay, thank you. Online, I see Councillor Christian Hogg, who I know, and I believe we have Councillor Bensley joining us for the first time.
Yeah, morning, Chair. Thank you for this invite. That's my first time. From Norfolk County Council.
And I see Councillor Stephen Ferguson as well.
Yeah, hi, my name's Stephen Ferguson and I'm from Cambridgeshire County Council.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody. If we can move on, can I ask all members and officers to have their microphone on mute until they wish to or are invited to speak. I need to let you know that we're not expecting a fire alarm today. So if one does sound, please use the stairs to leave the building and convene on the field opposite the visitors car park. Or please follow the Democratic Services Officer. I've gone through those online at the moment. We're all expecting Councillor Baxter Payne, Councillor Shayla from Cambridgeshire. Just okay, good. Councillor Baxter Payne has just joined us. Sorry. Okay. Councillor Peter Butlin has just joined us online, and the remainder are in the room. So if we move on to the agenda, the first item is the minutes of the previous meeting, which are on pages 3 to 8 of your agenda pack. As I wasn't at the meeting, can I ask someone who was at the meeting to move it, and then someone for a seconder as well, please?
Happy to move, Chair.
Seconder, please. Okay, thank you very much for that. Item 2, I've not been notified of any urgent items, so we will move on to item 3, which is declarations of interest in respect of items on the agenda. So is there any declarations, anyone? I don't see any. So thank you very much. Item 4, we don't seem to have any items referred to us from the Finance and Audit Subcommittee. So we will move on to item 5, which is the Director's Progress Update. And it's page 9 to 22 on the agenda pack. And Christian, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everybody. So normal progress report from me, for members who've been in the committee a while will be used to this. It comes in 3 parts. First part is we look at the finances, then we look at operational performance. And the third part is the sort of people HR stuff. Today, I'm going to pass over shortly to my colleague Gary, who's going to do more of an in-depth on the finances, and I'll pick up section 2 and 3 of this report. So if I pass over to you, Gary.
Thank you, Christian. So yeah, I'm going to summarise the period for year-to-date financial position up to the end of July 24, and then articulate kind of the items affecting our forecast to the end of the year, so the full year forecast, and take you through a kind of detailed run through. So for context for some of the newer members, back in February at the Finance and Audit budget presentation, I set out a budget, and that was to achieve a 7.2 million surplus in the 24-25 year. That was largely based on a number of factors, the main ones being sort of store sales increasing of 3%, and that was based on market intelligence we received from C3, which indicated easing of some of the funding pressures in the market this year. It also assumed sort of direct volumes were in line with the prior year, and it allowed for the normal sort of price inflation, deflation, and passing that on to our customers. The other assumption was around rebate growth, so we assumed a rebate growth of 7% growth, increasing the rebate budget up to 13.2 million. So at the period 4M position, we've achieved a surplus of 4.5 million, and that's £500,000 ahead of budget, which is really pleasing to see. What we've seen across the first 4 months is a contraction of the educational supplies market. The educational supplies market does also remain really tight. We've seen some really fierce competition last year from competitors, and it's very similar again this particular year. Despite the unexpected contraction in the market, our trading activity has performed really well over the first 4 months, particularly in development areas. And we've seen some really good growth in store sales for our competitive pricing offer that we set, and targeted growth strategies into those key development areas. Moving on to sort of sales and margin activity. So ESPO has really managed to remain competitive through that period of contraction in the market, and continues to offer a really good value to schools across the pre-peak period and into the kind of peak trading window where we're at period 4. Catalogue sales across the first 4 periods have largely been down, reflecting that contraction in the market. So you can see that they're down 1.2% in total value on stores and down 12.1% in sales value on directs. Similar to last year, across the sort of April and May periods, we did see a bit of a slow start to the year, particularly on direct sales, as schools really took the time to carefully plan out their available budgets for the year, in light of the uncertainty as to whether teacher pay rises would be funded. Total sales to July 2024 were 36.7 million, and that was 1.2 million behind budget and 0.2 million behind last year, so very much in line with last year. And that generally reflects the overall contraction of the market. We've managed to as I kind of mentioned, we've managed to partly offset that contraction of the market with growth into the development areas. And that's come through additional volume growth through that competitive pricing offer and our targeted sales campaigns. Although the sales value is down, budgeted margins have been achieved, and that's really pleasing to see. The latest BESA information continues to indicate that there's been a contraction of the educational supplies market across 24-25 as schools tighten their budgets. A key point on that is that across our member spend, particularly, we've seen that go down 15%. And kind of as I alluded to earlier, on the positive side, the additional volume growth, our overall market share does continue to be increasing from the year-on-year growth we've seen over the last 3 years. Supplier prices remain relatively stable, and that's enabled us to largely hold the catalogue prices we set across the first half of the year, and should largely enable us to continue holding those through the remainder of the year as well. Our gross profit margin on stores is 28.6%, so slightly ahead of budget. And last year, our margin really benefited from the sort of in-year supplier cost price reductions we saw last year. And we haven't certainly seen any of those cost price reductions this particular year during the course of the year. One of the key activities we do across the year is we continue to actively benchmark our prices against the competitors. We use a price scraping tool called Scoodle, and that ensures our prices remain competitive and we can deliver on the pricing strategy. So overall, our direct sales is at 5.8 million. It's behind budget by 0.8 million, and that reflects that schools are deferring those sort of non-essential purchases, such as classroom furniture and equipment. On the positive side, the directs margin is averaged out at 17.5% across the first 4 months, so 0.7% above budget. And that's mainly driven from the mix of products sold, and even though that direct sales volumes are lower than budget. I think across the rest of the year, we're not expecting to make the same level of directs margin through the remainder of the year, as the product mix will be slightly different during the course of the rest of the year. Moving on to rebate income. So rebate income's doing well. It's benefiting from inflation, sort of organic growth and continuous improvements across the customer experience in the sign-up process. The rebate income of 5 million achieved so far this year is 0.3 million ahead of last year. So it's slightly behind budget at this stage, but this is expected to catch up over the next quarter. Pleasingly, through the rebate, as well as the sort of rebate growth, and also on the opposite side with the contraction in the market, we've managed to offset some of that reduction in sales through the improvements in the margin, and that's effectively resulted in overall gross profit margin year to date of 14.1 million, which is in line with budget. Moving on to the expenditure side, so expenditure spend is 9.6 million year to date. That's £500,000 better than budget. The main reasons for that are largely associated with vacancy savings, phasing of the procurement, training and legal costs associated with readying ourselves for the new procurement regulations, and slightly lower levels of order fulfillment costs than we anticipated in the budget across the first 4 months. Moving on to ETL and EduZone businesses. ETL serves the international and private sectors and has experienced really strong international sales year to date. And that reflects our work to increase the ESPO brand in this growing sector. EduZone, which focuses on the early years in the UK, is slightly behind budget. EduZone is really suffering with some of those similar financial pressures as schools are. And so what we're seeing in that particular market is increased rates of independent nurseries are closing or being acquired by some of the large nursery groups. And those pressure on nurseries are coming from increased energy costs and nursery staff leaving the sector as well for better paid work elsewhere. And that's placing significant pressures on that sector. So combined for the both activities, ETL and EduZone together, that's generated a 78k surplus year to date. Which is 32k better surplus than what we delivered last year and 51k better than budget, which is really pleasing to see some of that growth on ETL and EduZone. So how does the forecast look for the remainder of the year? So year to date, we've delivered a 4.5 million surplus, which is £500,000 ahead of budget. It's still early in the year, so we are expecting still to achieve the full year budget of a 7.2 million surplus. I think once ESPO's kind of completed the full trading activity of the summer period and the back to school period, the autumn mini peak that we're just going through at the moment, we will be able to provide a much more updated view on the forecast. Although the contraction of the market has been quite impactful for us, our competitive pricing offer we should manage to hold that through the remainder of the year without any need to change pricing. However, there are still some opportunities to increase this if schools do start to spend now that some of the teacher pay offer has been funded, and hopefully there's some budget for schools to spend on non-essential expenditure towards the second half of the year. Another on the expenditure side for the forecast, so the pay offer is at 1.3k per person versus the budgeted 1.97k. So there's a potential saving there of 200k for ESPO. We're not expecting any certainty on this yet until the final quarter, and so that saving hasn't been baked into our forecast currently. So just in terms of summary, volumes are up, mainly on our top 500 competitively priced products. A margin stable and cost control remains effective, and that's delivered ESPO a £500,000 additional surplus through the first 4 months. We remain on target to deliver the full year surplus target, so it's certainly a challenging market, but overall we're positioned quite well with our current price position, and we've generated a good surplus to date, so we stand well to deliver the budget for the year.
Thanks, Gary. That's very comprehensive. So I'll now cover the second and third part of the report. So the second part of the report is operational progress. Members will be familiar with this by now, and what we do is use a certain amount of metrics so we can see how we're performing. I probably just bring to attention this is our summer peak, so obviously that's the most strain we have in our operation is due through the summer. But you can see in July the sort of scale of what we did: dispatched nearly 218,000 order lines, and the fleet and courier made 22,000 deliveries. Our pick rate was very healthy at 35 lines per hour, but you can see our quality assurance number was at 6% against a budget or target of 3%. That really just reflects the use of seasonal agency workers, and regrettably you don't always get the sort of in-depth quality of picking and things that you would do with permanent members staff. Very healthy average order value is listed in the report, and pleased to see the stock availability at 96.2 over that summer period, with a stock turn of 4.7. In terms of our customer services team, I think members by now be used to me sort of providing excellent numbers in regards to their performance, and this quarter's no different. And you can see they handled nearly 6,000 calls, and average wait times were 56 seconds, with over half of them being less than 30 seconds, which I think is an absolutely fantastic performance by that team. You can also see that feeds through into kind of customer satisfaction, with our FIFO score was at 91%, which for that time of year, again, it is a pleasing number. We have the results of our annual business benchmarking survey for the Institute of Customer Service. I won't go into that because that's a separate report later in the committee. In terms of facilities management, you can see that we completed all our statutory inspections, and repair and maintenance services took place on the relevant due date. And another point of note is, following a procurement exercise, we have chosen a supplier to provide our narrow aisle truck that will operate in our new warehouse extension. There were no reported health and safety injuries in July, but I will draw your attention to there was a pallet push incident where a pallet was pushed through the racking in the warehouse on the 12th of July. As you'd expect, we've had a full health and safety review of that and created an action plan to avoid similar occurrences in the future. And that is a kind of very rare occurrence for us. In terms of the IT team, they've been busy serving internal customers. You can see they've maintained the 100% satisfaction rating. For doing that, the key sort of IT things at the moment is to continue the rollout of U-Secure, which is our cyber training. And you can see really impressive completion rates up at 98.7%. We've also worked hard as a project team looking at software as a service for our ERP, and we've identified Crown Commercial Services as a framework which could be a possible solution to do the procurement for that. In terms of the warehouse extension, I'm delighted to let members know we're at the stage now where the project's nearly complete, due to complete formally mid next month, but it has been delivered on time, in full and to budget, and we'll bring a full paper to the Finance and Audit Subcommittee, which will lay out, where we spent the money, where any variations been. But that's been a fantastic achievement led by David Godsall and team. And members will be invited at the next committee to do a site tour directly following management committee for anybody who's interested in seeing that extension. In terms of the third part, that really deals with staffing. And this time around, we're just looking particularly at sickness numbers. And you can see from the graph that our sickness numbers have sort of ticked up in recent times at just over 8 days. The corporate target is 7.5 days. So clearly we're above target currently. As a relatively small organisation, if you have 2 or 3 people on long-term sick, that obviously impacts the numbers. And actually, as a comparator, 8 days compared to across directorates fares fairly well. But we are obviously seeing that uptick and taking action in terms of looking at trends and casework to make sure that we control our sickness numbers. You have in the report the 3 primary causes of sickness listed, and I can advise members none of these absences have been declared as attributable to work-related activities. So finally, it's recommended that the Management Committee note the update provided on the actions and progress since the last update provided in June 2024. Thank you.
Thank you, Christian. Can I welcome Councillor Baxter Payne to the meeting? He wasn't there at the start. And members, do we have any questions? Councillor Rawlings.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just as a general question, and obviously it's very good to see we're going to, hopefully, despite the challenging circumstances, that we're going to hopefully achieve those surplus projections. Do you think, Christian, there's going to be any opportunities for us with potential sort of schemes that the government has sort of partially announced regarding breakfast clubs and those sort of things? Are there any opportunities, do we think, there? And we were talking about lunches again the other day as well.
Yeah, thank you for that. You know, any new sales channel is an opportunity. Through us, that would probably be through our framework solutions. We have catering services frameworks as opposed to like the catalogue side of the business. But yeah, the more catering that goes into schools, the more there is for us to bid to provide. So yeah, I think that is a really good point in general, though, which is this kind of mixed bag between general gloom and downtick versus pockets of optimism all over the place. So you know, we certainly are kind of managing in a way where we kind of accept the overall trend line for expenditure in schools, but see there are plenty of opportunities for us still as well.
Okay, anyone else in the room before I go to Councillor Battling? Councillor Wright.
It's just really following on from Councillor Rawlins' comment about it's the edu zone and the nurseries, and one of the things that the pockets of optimism you were talking about is the increase of the nursery hours from 15 to 30 going forward. And as you were looking at that, you know, that market area, I mean, it's struggling at the moment, but do you see that in the future could be a growth area that we need to have a look at?
Yeah, thanks for the question. And do you know what? It's always been a bit of an internal conversation where you've got the bulk of your expenditure in one place like schools. You put the resources there, and then people quite understandably poke and challenge how much resources you put into the small area, which is nurseries. But to your kind of point, the only way you're going to grow in that space is to resource it. So we have a whole separate team that looks particularly at nurseries, even though the spend proportions to schools is very low. Even at the moment, we have people on stands at nursery shows and we're launching a nursery group package. So definitely an area we haven't given up on. The challenge with it, I guess, is it's just a saturated market that everybody wants to supply into nurseries. But, you know, when you've got a low baseline, you should always expect growth. So we certainly haven't given up in that space.
Thank you. Councillor Batlin, would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, it's concerning minimum wage, which is topical at the moment. But how will you been affected by the fact that the government has taken away the exemption of minimum wage between school leaving age and 21? And are you projecting any kind of? There is a lot of talk that in the next budget the minimum wage will be increased substantially. Are you making any provisions for that?
I think in all honesty, Councillor Butland, you're a step ahead of me on this. So I don't know the numbers between how many people between 18 and 21 we have. So therefore what the impact would be. We do an annual commercial planning cycle where we look at everything in terms of policy and you know, make provision, so that I'm confident we would do that in the next commercial plan. But in terms of right here, right now, what would be the impact? I think it'd be very low. I'd be surprised if we had many people in that age range, but I'll certainly find out the detail and could provide that for members.
Just a summary to that, will it affect your recruiting policy? Because one of the adverse effects of having the minimum wage for people leaving school is that people are not going to employ them. They'll go for more experience from those above 21. Will it affect your policy?
As far as I'm concerned, it shouldn't affect our policy, because I think that's something where you're kind of making a small saving but losing the opportunity of a diverse workforce, bringing all sorts of different talents. So it certainly wouldn't be my policy position to try and save a few quid in order to not recruit a certain age range. So I don't think that would be the right thing for us to do.
All right, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hogg, would you like to come in?
Yes, Chair, thank you, and through you. I just wanted to really note the fact that, you know, the extension project, the fact that it's come in on time and on budget is a deeply impressive feat. And I just wanted to, you know, give my thanks to all those involved in that project, because in this day and age, with material prices going up, etc., I just find it incredible that you've been able to bring that in on time and on budget.
Thank you, Councillor Hogg. Do we have any more questions on this? No. In that case, I move that the update provided by the director be noted. Do I have a seconder? That's all right. Okay, thank you. Our next report is on the annual Institute of Customer Services benchmark service. So pages 23 to 28 of the agenda pack. Rachel, far away.
Okay, so the purpose of the report is to present the summary results of ESPO's annual Institute of Customer Service benchmarking survey. We've been members of the Institute of Customer Service since 2019, which was when I joined ESPO, and I was really keen that we became members of the Institute of Customer Service because they are the UK's independent professional customer service body, and it aims to improve business performance and customer satisfaction and experience across the industry. And it also gives us lots of insight and research that we wouldn't normally have access to, as well as networking opportunities and staff training opportunities. So the Institute has over 400 members and works with businesses, public sector and across the government to improve that customer experience and help position the UK as leaders of service. Since 2008, the Institute conducts the UK Customer Satisfaction Index, or the UK CSI, and those results are published twice a year, and they provide an independent and objective benchmark view of the situational experience of customers within organisations. So tends to survey 282 organisations and across 13 different sector types. And it provides a really unique way of tracking and comparing customer satisfaction performance across the UK. And ESPO's results are benchmarked against the January 2024 results. So being members gives us access to that data. We conduct the annual survey and we assess where we are in terms of the UK CSI, and we benchmark ourselves against the retail non-food sector. We feel that that's the most aligned to our sector. And we contact customers who've contacted us or transacted with us over a 12-month period with a spend of more than £50. And we contacted last year 14,500 customers, and they receive an email and they're invited to participate in that survey. And we received 114 responses back, and the Institute deemed that a minimum of 100 responses are required to make those results viable, really. So the survey results provide us a really good insight check. It helps us identify strengths and weaknesses compared to the UK sector averages, and we use those results to continually review our performance. In addition to being members, the Institute of Customer Service also has the opportunity for accreditation, and we're looking to start that journey within the end of this year. So that's called a Service Mark Achievement, and what that looks to do is assess you against your business benchmarking results, but also what your internal view is, your employee engagement and commitment to a customer service strategy. So we're really excited to start that journey. So in terms of the body of the report, it's the UK CSI results are the largest cross-functional customer benchmarking study, when they have 45,000 responses a year, and it looks at a number of metrics. So 26 metrics are assessed in overall. So it looks at things like future customer behaviour, whether customers are likely to recommend or remain as a customer, and what their customer effort is. It also looks at channel usage and satisfaction, and the causes of complaint and the ability to handle those complaints effectively. For the areas of assessment, it looks at 5 particular areas. So that looks at experience, so things like product, service, range, competency of staff, helpfulness of staff, whether we explain information clearly. Also looks at complaint handling, the outcome of those complaints and the speed of resolution. And that emotional connection, so whether customers feel reassured by ESPO and their ethos, so our ability to interact with us and that we keep our promises. And then finally, ethics, that's around the reputation of the customer, whether ESPO are deemed organisationally to be doing the right thing. So on to the results. We were really pleased with the results. We scored an average of 86.1 compared to 80.4 for the retail non-food sector and 76 for the UK sector average. So a good 10 points above the UK sector average. And that pushes us into the boundaries. It assesses as people, really organisations that are deemed to have really high customer experiences. So things like First Direct, Nationwide, Waitrose, Amazon. So we're really pushing up there in terms of the delivery and the experience that customers are having with us. So for complaint handling, we had 70.9 compared to 65.8. For experience, 85.5 compared to 81.5, and the ethos, 86 compared to 79.8. So really high scores. Customers are really seeing that we're deemed to be doing the right thing. And really pleasingly, the Net Promoter Score, which is a single survey question that is effectively looking about whether a customer is likely to recommend a product or a service. And we scored really highly on that, 61.9. It's anything above 50 is deemed to be excellent. 80, you're deemed to be world class. So that's where we really want to be pushing towards. And then in terms of customer effort, so the lower the customer effort score, we scored 2.7, and that's deemed how easy you are to do business and creating that frictionless experience for customers. And the UK average for that is 4.4. So again, some of the improvements in rows that we've made are clearly having an impact. The survey also looks at channel usage. So for the first time, we've had a greater proportion of customers reporting that they're transacting with the website and higher satisfaction rate, so 85.5. And the highest channel satisfaction rate, unsurprisingly, is telephony at 91%. And that's predominantly because people actually do still like that human interaction, particularly when it's about dealing with a customer issue or they want a product inquiry and just need some advice. So that remains really high. And then for satisfaction, again, really positive scores. So we've got a 9 for satisfaction and intention to remain as a customer, and customers likely to, in comparison, those scores are 8.5. So we scored most highly in relation to the helpfulness of staff, billing and invoicing, and our competency of our staff. And areas where customers stated they were less satisfied was around complaint handling. The real benefit of the report for me is not just our ability to be able to benchmark, but it also gives us some really great insights because customers have the ability to leave comments. So we trawl through those verbatim comments and look at the emerging themes. So there are a number of themes that came through that we'll be looking to use that feedback. So one was around website usability and functionality. Some comments from customers were around search functionality and ability to get to products quite quickly, and a lot of work's been done on that. So some work's been done on search optimization early in the new year, and that's also self-learning, so that's taking time to filter through. But we're really seeing positive comments around website usability from our FIFO comments, and are also looking to do some further work on improving based on the comments that we've received. There was a theme around customers for delivery and invoicing. So customers really looking for that faster and flexible delivery profile. Customers sometimes are quite happy to wait, but actually there might be products that they need really quickly, and about having that flexibility for next day delivery. And also for our directs channel, about improving the speed of delivery of items from directs suppliers. There are also areas highlighted about needs for quicker responses from customer service, whether that was via phone or online inquiries, and that was predominantly around the complaint handling side. And then the other two areas are around communication and information. So looking for better communication around the direct orders that they've made, out of stock items and clearer descriptions, and then around product range and pricing. So expansion of product range and looking at competitive pricing and loyalty discounts. So that really leads on to sort of the next steps of what we do with the survey. So we will look to do some further insight work with key customer groups to really understand whether those what's coming back is a representative. And then we will look to utilise that to develop a customer experience roadmap. And that will also include an customer experience strategy. So we'll look at things like service offer and commitments, delivery profiles, enhancements and streamlining processes to make sure that's a really frictionless experience for our customers. And as referred to at the beginning, we'll be looking to start our internal service check survey to help us on that route towards accreditation. As part of the results, we've also created a short video which highlights the results of the Institute of Customer Service, and that's available for internal and external use, and is also a link on our website. And we're really proud of that. We work with a company called Premier, who we utilise to create informative videos and frequently asked question type videos that we use on the website. Just in terms of the next steps, there are no resource implications from the recommendations of the report. And just to conclude, really, we think the results are extremely positive and demonstrate the improvement journey that we've committed to at ESPO. And the results and the verbatim comments will be used to develop the next stage of the organisation's customer service roadmap to really enhance our customer offer and remain relevant and retain and grow the new business. So it's recommended that the Management Committee note the summary results of ESPO's annual Institute of Customer Service benchmarking survey and note that there are no equality and human rights implications arising from the recommendations within the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Before I open it up, I've got a question myself. On the customer service section, you said a few customers highlighted the need for a quicker response times from customers, whether it's online or phone. Is that because of our process, or is that, do you think they were just doing it because they're just not satisfied with what they got?
Thank you. It's a really good question. I think sometimes it can be very much a moment in time. If you're the customer that's had to wait 3 minutes, then or you've had to wait a period of time for an answer for a resolution, then you would expect that quicker response time. But on average, for the current calendar year, our average speed of answer is 36 seconds. So we're really proud of that, and the industry average is 4 minutes. But I think it is predominantly where the challenges are not necessarily around telephony now. It's around email resolution. People expect a very instantaneous response, and that can create challenges because that actually can be a longer interaction than a telephony interaction to be able to get to those details.
Okay, thank you. Members, any questions? First. Yes.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Obviously, really positive stuff coming out of that, and that's to be welcomed. If I could just pick up on the complaints, which I think you said was one of the sort of the weaker ends. Do we know why that comes out at sort of the weak end of the spectrum? Is it that people have unreasonable requests, so you investigate them and find actually there's no case to answer and they're unhappy with that, or is it something else?
Thank you. Our customers are actually very, very accommodating, which is really great for us. I think the length of time is around those investigative procedures where it might be a shortage or a damage item where we've actually got to really understand how that failure has happened and the accuracy of that complaint, and then being able to fulfil that. So that creates quite a period that that is elongated in terms of being able to get to the resolution. What we've tried to be doing is being quicker at acknowledging that we've got it and that we're dealing with it. And we're also doing some work around, particularly around returns, because that can be quite an elongated process. So we're working on putting an electronic process in to be able to record and track that, and putting then having management information to be able to do SLAs around that, so we can really commit. Because I think a lot of the time it's the unknown for people about how long it's going to take to resolve. So it is mainly around those really sort of more tricky investigative pieces of work that do take longer.
Councillor James.
Thank you. And I think it's building further on that part, because what really quite excites me is that emotional connection. Scoring is absolutely phenomenal. And I think if we've fine-tuned it in one avenue of correspondence, I think it'll be really easy to lift, shift and replicate it. And the fact that, it's not just recommendations, it is that retention score that's doing really, really well. I think we've got some really fantastic building blocks for those next stages. Thank you.
That's right.
It's just a question interesting, seeing about the website interaction as versus the catalogue. So that's really, for me, going forward, where do we go with that? So that, I mean, I'm always a bit sceptical on surveys. 114 responses out of a 14,000 to me is quite a small cohort. So it's just how we use this information sensitively on a strategy point of view going forward. But that was one point I picked up on that, be interested to know where that goes.
Okay, any other questions? No. In that case, I move that the update provided be noted. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Pond. Thank you very much, everyone. Item number 6, our next report is on the annual Institute on Human Resources and Organizational Development Business Partner and Work Programme. Kerry, over to you.
Thank you, Christian. Thank you, Chair. Good morning. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to introduce myself more than anything. So the purpose of my report today is to introduce myself as the HR and OD business partner supporting ESPO as part of Leicestershire County Council. This will give an update on the HR work programme I'm actually looking at for ESPO and the colleagues that are within that service. So over the past 2 years, there's actually been 3 different HR and OD business partners supporting ESPO. I am new to post. I started on the 7th of May 2024, and I'm actually new to Leicestershire County Council as well, because I came from Nottingham City Council. I have worked in HR for 27 years and the public sector for 28 years, so I do have quite a lot of experience. Just in terms of myself, I do have a bachelor's in behavioural sciences, an MSc in criminal justice studies, and I was recently professionally assessed as a chartered member of CIPD, so I am a qualified HR professional as well. So in terms of the work that I've already done within ESPO, it was actually talking with the senior leaders and key colleagues within the service to understand the challenges and the desires of where ESPO wants to go through its people. We've recently reviewed the HR services supporting ESPO as well, and have a newly formed team that is dedicated to support of the organisation. There's myself as the HROD business partner. I am supported by a HR manager looking at the tactical and operational side within the services. And then we have a HR advisor and a HR administrator supporting all of the day-to-day operational HR and people. The review and talking with the assistant directors, the heads of service and Christian really gave me a clear idea and remit of what the objectives were for the next 6, 12, 18 months of the business. I'm responsible for that strategic direction for HR within there and advising these individuals, but also about looking at that holistic plan of where we actually want to go in terms of that support. There were 2 very clear areas that were identified. So one of those was the health and well-being of the workforce. So as Christian alluded to, in terms of sickness absence and absence management within the organisation, because we want to contribute to that reduction and support that health and well-being, but also the need for a clear strategy for attraction, recruitment and retention, especially with key roles within the business, because there is a very competitive market around certain roles within the services. So there's a real need for succession and workforce planning. So they're the two key areas that I'll be looking at in the next 6 months. The priorities have then driven the development of three very specific things. So we are starting work with public health on the Healthy Workplaces programme. So they are part of a national programme through the LLR, the Leicestershire County Council, Leicester City and Rutland, in looking at supporting small, medium and large size businesses with health promotion within the workplace. We've actually entered into that with public health and they're really excited to be working with us on that. And that is doing surveys, health MOTs, health champions, so that employees feel supported and can access a variety of different services, both from the employer, but also within the community as well. We're also developing the talent approach for the next 3 years, so from 2025 to 2028. And that is the framework for both the succession and workforce planning. So looking at the needs of the organisation within those 3 years, how we want to attract and retain as well. And that is also looking at the impact of different initiatives, the increase in apprenticeships, graduate programmes, but also things as the increase in the minimum wage and how do we actually balance that within the workforce as well. All of that will feed into the whole workforce development programme that we're pulling together at the moment. And that is through the needs that have been identified with the annual performance reviews with each and every employee and the discussions that are coming out from very specific pieces of work as well, such as the survey into customer services. The final thing that I've actually done is refresh the employee engagement group within ESPO. So that group has been in for a number of years. What we've done is we've spoken about what that group should do, what are the roles and responsibilities of each individual of that group as well, because the employees also have a responsibility to actually engage rather than be quite passive. So we've gone through all of that as well. We want to increase those communications within the workforce and actually feel that they understand their contribution within the organisation. So we've gone through that, and through that we're looking at an increase in job satisfaction, morale, and therefore productivity and performance. So that is the work programme that I'm actually looking at for the next 6 months. There are no resource implications other than those that are already attributed to the services that we're providing with ESPO. And I would like to recommend to the committee that they take note of this work programme and support and accept that for the next 6 months.
Thank you. Members, do we have any questions? Councillor Pollard.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you again for the report. In terms of the sort of priorities looking at going forward, improvement of health and well-being of the workforce to contribute obviously to absence management, obviously vital. We saw in, I think it was the report before last, that the absences recorded so far, that the key reasons are actually attributed to outside work activities. So given that, is there anything we can do as an employer that to meaningfully impact on injuries and happening out of work?
Thank you for that. Definitely, yes. So part of the Healthy Workplaces work is actually about the whole individual. So it's actually talking to them. There is blood pressure, cholesterol checks, just talk to them about their general well-being and their own personal circumstances as well. So it's not just about them being an employee, it is the holistic individual. Colleagues within the health and safety unit as well have been emphasising that things like manual handling doesn't mean just lifting a box or moving a pallet at work. It actually means when you're climbing a ladder and going into the loft at home. So we're trying to make those connections to help employees understand that they can use these same tactics and techniques at home as well as in the workplace.
Is there any other questions? That's right.
Just one. It's the balance, really. I mean, I think the work programme's great. I think it's really good. And I think, as Gary alluded to when he did his first paper was about the vacancies that we've got at the moment, because we're making savings because we've got vacancies. So there's obviously an area there that we need to include in this programme, as well as, you know, retention and recruitment. There seems to be, you know, that a bit of a gap there for me. So I don't know what your feelings are on that.
Thank you for that. Yes, definitely. So the first conversation that I started to have was about the attraction. So how do we actually attract people to the organisation, and that potential candidates understand what ESPO is, because it's quite, it's not unique, but there are very few organisations that are both private orientated and very rooted in the public sector. And I think, you know, especially from individuals' own ethos and moral standing, that is very appealing to a lot of people that we don't sell enough. So yeah, definitely the attraction piece is part of that workforce planning, the succession planning. How do we reach those individuals? How do we sell the benefits of being both public sector but also having that private focus?
Members, any other questions? Councillor Rawlins.
Thank you. It's very interesting. Just a couple of questions on the sort of the government are sort of intimating that they might, you know, extend the requirement for employers to provide health checks on a more formal basis. Obviously, what you're suggesting as informal discussions, really. So I'd just like you comment on that. You know, keeping an eye on what's coming out of central government, and also just on the proposals for compressing work as well, because obviously that's I don't know what pressure there would be on ESPO employees to do that. Clearly, that makes it very difficult when you're handling goods. When it's more appropriate probably when you you know, more of an office-based scheme. So I just wanted to your views on that. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Obviously, I'll take those separately, and I'll actually take the second one first, if I may. So ESPO is part of Leicestershire County Council in terms of policies, procedures. We are very clear in terms of flexible working, alternative ways of working. There is already a number of individuals within the business that do work on a flexible basis, whether that is compressed hours, annualised hours, term time hours. So we do have experience of doing that, and we'll be able to accommodate that going forward, subject to service delivery requirements, which I think is what the government will always put in as that caveat, that there has to be a balance between employer-led demands and the employee's rights. So I think we will take that in terms of that one and keep a careful eye on it, really. In terms of health, safety and wellbeing, again, we've a very wide, inclusive programme within Leicestershire County Council that ESPO have full use of in terms of occupational health, time to chat, pause to chat, where employees can actually just ring and talk to an individual if they just need some sort of talking therapy. So we do already have quite a wide basis of wellbeing support programs. In terms of formal health checks, it will be interesting to see where we go with that. There is part of the programme we're bringing formal health checks. They are clinical physicians that will be performing these checks and advising these individuals. Again, it's very much watching the landscape of how we go with this, but the priority is supporting these individuals. We'll be interested to see where we can go with that one in future.
Okay, no one else has got a question. I've got a question. You talked about the refreshed employee engagement group, and we talked about vacancies that we got. So it's important to keep the staff that we've got. So can you just talk us? I know you said you refreshed it, but can you talk us through the process of how that works in practice?
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, first off, I have been to 2 of the employee engagement meetings so far, because they meet every 2 months, so my period, and it was very much talking to the employees about what they wanted out of these groups. They do really appreciate the ability to raise their concerns through them, to talk about issues. But when talking with them, they also wanted to have more responsibility and more direction to impact change. So that was very much, so it was talking with those individuals, but also ensuring that every service is represented within that group as well, rather than it being predominantly back office, and the traditional office-based individuals, because we want to include and ensure that we're actually talking to people in the operations, the warehouse, transport, the drivers. So it was very much about building up how we could have that inclusive approach of communication. Some people, they do have access to technology, so staff comms through emails is great, others don't. So they've actually fed back about how they would like that. So again, that is about having their voice heard, representing that and repeating it back to them as well, so that they can share that.
Okay, thank you. Members, any more comments, questions? In that case, I move that the intended work programme for HR services for the next 6 months, as detailed in paragraph 6 of the report, be noted and supported. Do I have a second? Councillor Wright. Thank you. Item number 8, I'd just like to remind people that the next meeting is due to take place on Wednesday, 13 November at 10:30 in the morning. As I said previously, there's no urgent items, so we will move to the exclusion of the press and public. So I move that in accordance with the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting for the remaining items of business on the grounds that they involve the likely disclosure of exempt information. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Rawlins. If we just wait for Anna to...
Yeah.
That's enough.